Welcome to the Deep Thinker Society. And I'm Lauren Marie, and this is my co-host, Carissa. Do you want to go by Carissa or you want to go by Carissa?
I think Carissa.
Carissa C?
I mean, Carissa C. You could do Carissa C. My family nickname growing up was Chris. So, went by that by many years. But like Carissa is just like first, last name kind of compacted. And I'm like, well, Carissa C. was taken an email. So, that's how I came up with that. Carissa.
I think it's cute.
You think it's cute? I feel like it's just what you would call like a little furry animal. Or I don't know. But yeah, that's like a chinchilla. There you go.
Oh, those are cute.
Yeah.
So Carissa, you are into something, not a lot of people know about, and you just started it. So why don't you talk a little bit about this new avenue you're taking?
So, my whole entire life, I've always kind of worked like corporate 9-to-5 job, right? Just your run-of-the-mill desk job, payroll, accounting, yada, yada. And I've decided to take on a second career, so to speak, because I still plan on staying in the corporate world. But I've decided to take on another career, and I don't really want to call it a career. This is more like a soul's purpose. This is my soul's journey. And I decided a couple months ago that I wanted to enroll in the end-of-life doula program at Southwest Institute of Healing Arts here.
And how do you spell that? Doula? How do you spell that?
Doula is D-O-U-L-A.
Doula. Okay.
Doula. Yeah. And it's a very ancient, old type reference. The most common doulas that you hear of are a midwife doula, a birth doula. Yeah. They're generally, they're widely known as women who help other women who decide to have like an at-home birth. And, they're there to help the baby, come into this world, help the mom and the baby.
So transition in and transition out.
And I feel absolutely, yes, I feel my soul's purpose is to help those souls transition into the afterlife. And so I feel that my experiences that I've gone through in life have helped prepare me for this. And not to get off topic, but I remember speaking to a medium, just somebody who I knew in casual conversation, and we were just talking about relationships and the people that come in and out of our life, whether it's for a lifetime or a season, right? And, she said, and I just happened to kind of quip about, the relationships that I've had and how I've always been the lesson in that relationship to the other person. And she said something that stuck with me to this day. And she said, Carissa, you are an empath. You are a healer. And if this is something that you do not make your mission in life or make it a career, it's going to bleed over into your personal life with your relationships, with your friends, your relationships, your family, because that's your soul's purpose. That's what you were meant here to do. And so the universe is going to make sure that you do that. And
it will.
Yes, it will. And, you are going to continue to keep meeting these people who need healing. And it's going to impact your personal life. And if you wonder, why are my relationships full of, strife or havoc or whatever the case may be, right? You're not getting something from the relationship. Well,
It's almost
You're
like you need the avenue outside of your personal life to do that skill so that your personal life can thrive. Kind of like an artist needing that like way to express themselves, or, a doctor needing to like do that. You need that way to
Mhm,
channel that energy so that it isn't channeled
right,
negatively in your personal life. That makes a lot of sense.
right. And so that statement has stuck with me for years. This was a conversation that probably took place 15 years ago. And so I just never really truly knew how that would be possible. Um, and I, do read cards. I read playing cards a little bit different than, oracle cards or tarot cards. This was something that was taught to me by my grandmother, and she learned from her mother. So this is a practice of divination. And I know we'll get into that later. So I thought maybe that's the avenue. Maybe that's it, is I'm learning to read cards. My grandmother taught me certain different modes of healing, whether it was candle work, cards, and I thought, okay, this is it. Maybe this is
Right.
just what I'm meant to do. Um,
There's a buildup here.
and
Something's coming. What was
yeah,
that? What was that defining moment?
the defining moment was last year, and I just started coming across just end of life doula podcasts that were being suggested to me, and um, I was there with my grandfather when he passed away. I was there with my grandmother when she passed away. I feel like I've been at people's bedsides in their last hour, starting as young as probably 7 years old.
When when
So
when that when those happen to you, when you find yourself in those, I had that happen to me, very similar, but not to the extent of you. My question for you is, when you're sitting there, especially since it's happened to you more than once, like, and that they're not going to come out of this, like, what in your mind, what are you thinking about? Like, what's going on in your mind when you know that they're getting ready to pass over? Like,
I profoundly curious about what they're experiencing in that moment. I mean, in addition to, of course, my sadness. Now that I'm older, I can look back and I understand that sadness. But now that I'm older, I have a lot more understanding. I've grown exponentially when it comes to, my spirituality. I don't see it as sad anymore.
yeah,
It should be celebrated that they
yeah,
lived a good life, and now they're going to transition into the next phase of their journey.
right,
Um, they essentially, we learn every single day. We're learning new things up until the day we die, because in that moment we're learning how to die. In that moment, that's our final lesson. Is And so now, like I said, a much more grown up person, I feel that, it should be celebrated, like, you know, they're transitioning to the next journey. What a beautiful life that this person
yeah,
had. And even if maybe they didn't have such a beautiful life, now they're going to move on to where there's unconditional love.
right.
So in my opinion, whatever life they lived, they're transitioning to unconditional love. And
When
that's, when,
when a doula who is like who's helping life come in, I know there's certain like medical things that they need to learn about, birthing a baby and whatnot, especially if they are the type of midwife. Maybe the baby is going to be born in water. There's a lot of different ways to help birth a baby. But as a doula, with transitioning out of life, what types of things do you do to make that transition peaceful and like accepting for them? Because I know that when my mom passed, she did tell me, not at the very last moments, but prior to that, when she was doing everything she could to extend her life, and her doctor's telling me she should, be prepared for the quality of life moving forward. And she wasn't going to give up. And she said, I'm scared to die. And of course, it's the unknown that we're scared of, right?
Right.
So,
Right.
what types of things does a doula transitioning out of life do?
First and foremost, as an end of life doula, the most important thing is to hold space for that individual, and hold space for the family as well. And I think that's where it starts, is just holding space for them and, essentially just being there as added support for the individual and the family in whatever manner that may look like. I am certified level 1 Shambhala Reiki, so I could offer Reiki healing. One thing about the end of life doula is that we can also perform ceremonies based upon the beliefs of the individual. Would they, maybe a smudging, whatever the case may be. There are those spiritual aspects that are going to be intertwined with, the emotional support, the psychological support as well. But I think really what it comes down to is just, honoring that individual, honoring their wishes. And, at the end of the day, that individual is not going to be here. So it's kind of like, you might know that they have X, Y, and Z time, and they may not be accepting of it. Just make every single day, like you said, quality of life.
So with a midwife, you're going to have a baby. And so you look maybe for a doula to be your midwife. And then in this case, is it the family that searches out somebody to help with a doula? Like, how does that work? Like, in what scenario would somebody come to you to be a doula for their loved one? How does that work?
There are organizations out there. There is like I believe it's called Imelda. There is an end of life doula organization that you could register. I believe there's like local organizations that you can register with. So there's resources out
So
there.
then they go to like one of those organizations, and then they would like pick up. Is the a practitioner the right word? Like what would
Um,
or pick
I,
that
I
like
I think like a practitioner would be more more medical. But if it would, a doula is a lot like a hospice nurse, but remove the medical certifications and mix in some Reiki and sage. It's,
so basically
it's
accompanying them and making
right, right. So, I mean, as an end of life doula, I could definitely take it a step further and maybe be like a CNA. I, don't want to get into the too deep in the weeds of being a nurse. Like, I'm not trying to be an RN or an LVN. But I could definitely, enhance myself as an individual and, from an entrepreneur standpoint, I could say, I am a CNA and I'm also an end of life doula. I could take vitals and, offer a smudging as well. So, but typically, end of life doula is just a spiritual hospice nurse. They can provide respite to the family as a caregiver too. Hang out with the individual for a couple hours so the family can go and have dinner. So.
right and be there as like a support.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
that's kind of like an intense, job to want to take on and help, because I mean, there's so much like energy that is not pleasant at the end of a person's life. Not always, don't get me wrong, but it's not even always the elder person who's passing, or the person. It could be a child too. Don't get me wrong, but
Right.
it's not really.
Exactly.
Yeah, but that goes to my point in the sense that there's a lot of energy of sadness, because, but not necessarily the person that's ill or the person dying, but with the family, and maybe even the guilt that that person passing away is feeling for their family. I mean, there's so many layers to like the emotions and being an empath. I personally don't know if I could do that, not because I wouldn't want to be there for someone, but because I would literally be emotionally drained each time that I went through it. That it would just, it would be hard. Now, I believe like you in the sense that like when somebody passes, I don't have fear for them. I don't have fear for even me. I'm accepting of it because my personal beliefs on passing is very positive. Um, it's us who stay behind, the family and the friends who no longer have the energy of that human in their daily life, that is the part that is the hardest. I feel like, and I, when I hear people talk about, suicide or wanting to end their life, or wanting to end their life because somebody made them feel a certain kind of way. I mean, it makes me want to just go up to them and explain to them that I know this is a hard world to live in, and motivate them to find out what it is in them that they need so that they can find it here, and understand that really the only thing they're doing is, hurting the people that are left behind. And, I mean, yes, it'll be better. It will absolutely 100% be better because
It will.
it's a beautiful world, but there are ways to, bring that here. And I have to remind myself that sometimes too, because we live in a intense world.
We do.
We
It,
really do.
it's. I agree. To kind of circle back, when I received my level 1 Reiki attunement, um, the woman who is teaching the class, really dear friend of mine, she said, Reiki's really good, especially for those who are, maybe passing. You can give Reiki. She goes, it's really good for end of life doulas to have a Reiki certification because they can give Reiki to the passing individual. And I was like, there it is. I knew it.
Yeah.
Like that was my confirmation. I'm there. First of all, I thought I was just going to go to a class, just a level 1 Reiki Shambhala class to learn. I had no idea that I was getting my attunement right then and there. So and my son was with me. So we got it at the same time. So that was like,
Oh, your son is attuned too?
huh? Yeah, we
That's
attended the
really
class
cool.
together. Yeah.
That's really
So,
cool.
yeah. And, it was awesome. I was like, oh, okay. And
And
so
it
I'm
feels
like, oh
good. Reiki feels so
my goodness,
good. Yeah.
it does. When I, give Reiki to myself, it's just, it's just amazing.
Yeah.
And, um, so I absolutely love it. I had my first Reiki session probably about 4 or 5 years ago. And, I just have loved it ever since. So I'm looking forward to advancing my levels, in time. But I have the first level down. I could use that now.
If you have the opportunity, do your second level at the same time. For me, I did level 1 and level 2 in my early 20s, and I never forgot the symbols. I never forgot the sounds. And it's they go very well together. One is like the kickstart and the other one is like the bam, And I have not had one person that has received Reiki that didn't, like, at the very least, feel immensely relaxed. And for me, my favorite spot is like the head. Like, Reiki on the head is like just so peaceful. Like, it's just beautiful. And seeing what you get. Do you get visions when you? Because I get visions.
Yeah, it depends. I get visions or I get blasts of color.
Oh yeah, definitely. A lot of purple stars for me, but I do get blasts of color. When so the last so I've had two major Reiki sessions that were like very end of life-ish. And one was for this man who sought me out. I was doing astrology readings at Well Springs, and it was a psychic fair event, and somebody's like, there's somebody here to see you. He's asking for you specifically. And I'm like, okay. And he came back like in this like rush, and and he was really thin and old and like gruffy and like, you know, typical like older person with cancer, kind of grumpy, and he sought me out and he's like, "You do Reiki?" And I'm like, "Yeah, let's do this." Well, he was dying of lung cancer. And so he invited me to his home to give him, and I discovered while I was working on him that it wasn't just the Reiki for me, because the Reiki really tuned me in to the divinity of it all. Like it opened up those channel centers. And suddenly I knew where to move the energy from in his body. And he was getting upset. He's like, no, I just want the Reiki. Like, I just want the Reiki. It's all grumpy. And I'm like, but I knew what I needed to be doing, like, yeah, he did need the Reiki, but like he had energy in places that needed to move and cycle through his body. And he was so stubborn, but he kept having me back. But it was funny because he'd give me cash. He'd be like, "If you got to go, my wife's coming home. She doesn't know about this," and he didn't, because I guess it was alternative healing. And he, knew that
that's very taboo. It's
very,
alternative healing. Very taboo.
And then, so recently, I moved into a new home here in Queen Creek, and as you know, Arizona is big with snowbirds. And a Canadian husband and wife moved in across the street, or they were here across the street. They knew the people who used to live in my home, and they kept coming over and being super friendly. And he was telling me, how he wasn't feeling good, and I don't know what came over me, because I know that, first of all, Arizona is very like Stone Age with like healing and certain things, and very religious. And then he was from Canada, and I don't know how Canadians are with stuff like that. But something told me to tell him, I was like, well, I am an energy healer. I do Reiki. And he's like, well, you'll have to tell my wife about that, And so he brought his wife over, and I went and did a session with him, and it was so cute. So he sat in his living room, and I did work on him, and I, moved his energy around, and I got a vision that hit in his stomach area, because his thing was he was getting dizzy and falling. So I worked on his head a lot, but I was getting something that he didn't know about in his stomach area. And I told him and his wife, when they came over to thank me, that, there's something you're eating. I said that, you shouldn't, that you really like, but in the back of your mind, you shouldn't be eating it. And I said, it's really affecting you. And I'm like, do you guys eat healthy? And he's like, yeah. And his wife's all, no. It was so cute. The only thing that makes me sad is that they went home for the summer and they haven't been back. So, I know. So it could have maybe been serious, or maybe health. I don't know, but he was fairly older. So I don't know the level of their, I'm praying for them all the time. Whenever I look over there, I was like, you're supposed to be here right now. Where are you? I know. But Reiki, yeah. But my point with that is that as you should get your next attunement if you're open to it. And as you use it, you'll discover magically your other gifts. Like they'll come to you. Like it's just because you open to the Reiki being channeled through you. So then you're opening up to the universal, and it'll trigger like gifts and downloads and you,
Right now, right
yeah,
here. Right.
you'll
Chills.
discover so much about yourself as you open up to the universe. You know what I mean? Um, for the longest time, and still I only do Reiki or healing energy when it's asked of me or if I feel a calling, because I am so empathic. And
Yeah, you have to be careful. It's like you have to really pick and choose who. There's certain people that I won't read cards for.
well, then you
You
nailed
won't.
it. You nailed it because tell me how you feel about this. I'm a firm believer that in order to heal, you have to want to do the work, because I could magically take it all away, right? I could clear your body. I could find that spot, clear it away, heal it. But once it's healed, the dysfunction that went along with it in life, now that's magically gone too, right? But you've always lived from the survival mode of that pain or trauma or whatever caused it, right? And now you don't know what to do. And so unless you do the trauma work that starts to immediately come up when you get a healing session, then it will come back and you'll be like, oh no, healing doesn't work. Well, guess what? It worked, but you have to do the work. And so I think that's part of it too. I think that, people want a quick fix or somebody to do it for them. But when we have pain in our body, it's our body's way of saying something's out of alignment. So what really needs to happen is they need to be aware that I can do it, but you really have to be the one that does it.
Right.
What do you think about
Absolutely. No, I agree 100% because I have somebody who they're not family but close family friend, and they asked for a reading and gave them a reading, and and it was kind of a difficult reading to get through just because of the type of the individual that this person is. And I said, well, this is what I see, XYZ. Here's your answer, and it was like as if like that person didn't believe me. There was some skepticism.
Yeah.
Some skepticism. And I felt like, well, if I'm going to experience this skepticism during a reading, I can only imagine I'll probably be met with that same skepticism every single time. But also, essentially giving them the answers, doing the work, like you said, doing the work. They didn't do the work. And what I read, came to fruition. And I said, well, I don't want to, you just, it's so weird because, the little petty Betty in me wants to be like, I told you so,
But you
but
can't. Yeah.
I can't. I just
No.
keep my call to myself. I can't be like that. I can't have that.
But also,
That
like, if
mind.
you have a close relationship with them to the point where you know each other well, it's also hard to do a reading because they can't separate you telling them your opinion and your advice because you know them so well from what you're actually getting. And, I have that in my life and I don't always do readings for that exact reason, but then you have the ones that are genuinely open and genuinely, I have people coming to me all the time, Lori, what do you think about it? Or what is my start? What do my charts say? And those people are open, but I've never had somebody come to me and say, no, that's not me at all. That's all wrong, and usually it's like, that makes a lot of sense. And I always start by telling them straight up, take whatever I say that feels right and leave the rest, but it will still be in the back of your mind. And when the time comes, it'll be like an aha moment. It's like planting the seed, and it'll happen when
Yeah.
it's supposed to. So I tell them, take what feels right, leave the rest. And I always give homework at the end. I always say, okay, well, we discovered this, right? We discovered this about you. So why don't you try this, and that, and work on it? Because what's the point of me telling him what I see if I can't help them? Because there's so many therapists in general out there that say, oh yeah, you have blah, 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 blah. And it, it's here and there because I see this and I see that. Okay, well, now what? Well, I don't really feel like that therapists give enough like tools on what to do next. And that's just my opinion.
Yeah. One thing I won't do is read cards for somebody that I'm dating. I don't know how you feel about doing a chart for somebody. Well,
I absolutely do.
You have to. I get that. In the astro world, you have to. Like, absolutely. You got to see what you're getting into, and like, yeah. But for me personally, like, I won't read cards for somebody I'm dating. I did it once before, and I'll just never do it again. I
think too, there's a level of responsibility when we see things or when we know things. There's a level of responsibility, and that's something too. A lot of like, I don't really like the word psychic at all. Psychic to me is like such a jaded word, but intuitive. Yeah.
It gives people the look of Miss Cleo.
Yeah, because when you hear the word psychic, you think they could tell you the future on what's going to happen, but it doesn't really work that way. I mean, there are humans that can do that, but people that are in this field really just can tell you what they see and feel, and you can interpret it how you need to interpret it. But when I get people that come to me, I feel a responsibility that I can't always say everything. I can't always like tell that, and that I might need to say it in a way that is beneficial and not harmful for them. And I had an experience at an event that I worked, where a well-known psychic, basically had somebody come in with a spiritual emergency, but it was more like a domestic violence one, and there was children involved, and they literally freaked out and didn't really know because it was a real thing. It wasn't, tell me what you see, blah, blah, blah. It was a moment that they literally took their child out of a situation and went straight to the psychic fair for that help. And it was like, they didn't know what, like, and I thought in my mind, maybe you should like not, like maybe this isn't, and I realized in that moment that like, people really need to take responsibility when they get. So when you said you don't do it for somebody you're dating, for me, if I do it with somebody that I am close with like that, I might choose my words in a way that still gets the message across, without like ruining it, in general, because we have from your doula and your now Reiki and your readings. Do you feel an inclination toward any other divination? Or I know it will come to you, but like, do you feel a gravitational pull toward anything? Or like, what's your vibe on divination?
On other modalities of healing? Well, tarot is new for me, and so I, learning from you and other tarot readers and just practicing on my own. That is something new, and I'll pick it up every once in a while, and just the good old Rider-Waite deck, and I have oracle cards that I absolutely love. So But outside of just tarot and oracle being some new areas of divination, I currently don't feel called to anything else. But that's just could be that, I
But
have
yeah.
what I have right now, and
Yeah.
maybe that's just what I'm meant to have, and more stuff will come later. I'm sure of it.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Um,
You'll start, like, for me, I'm very much into reading signs everywhere. Like, once you really get into symbology, like, I'm a firm believer that the universe speaks to you everywhere all the time. Like, you
all
could
the time.
be just about anywhere. And if you're open enough that when you ask for that, sign, it's there. I'm a real believer, to the point where, like, I'll be driving and I'll have something on my mind and I'll be turning it over, and, bam, I'll turn around and I'll see a sign, or bam, I'll turn around and see, like, a number pattern. I'm very much into number patterns. I read number patterns a lot. Or, something like will pop up on the radio and, like, answer, oh, I have a great story. Check this out. So I used to work at Wellspring Metaphysics. Have you ever heard of that? In Gilbert,
No,
Arizona. There is a spiritual metaphysical store in Gilbert, Arizona, on Gilbert Boulevard, close to Sam's Club. And I used to do readings there when the owner, her name is Nina. She's this African American lady, and she's got all her own, stories and uniqueness. And her and I, we had a love hate connection. She was very much the dominant mama, and so I ended up leaving because I didn't really appreciate, the style of her work style. Again, it goes back to what you and I were talking about, like your moral ethics when it comes to the type of work that we do. So I took my work out on the road with me, and a couple years later, I was sitting at my desk, and oh yeah, it was right after COVID. I was sitting at my desk, and something called to me to look up Wellsprings, and oh no, I checked my email. That's what it was, and I got an email from them saying she had just passed. And I was like, oh, that's horrible. And I'm like, she passed, and it was really trippy. It was a really trippy thought. And, I sent good vibes her way. And then 10 minutes later, I heard a at my door, which was right next to me. So I went up and I was like, oh, that's weird. It's the middle of the day. Who's knocking at my door? And I opened my door. It's as far away as my arm. And it was a full on knock on my door. So I got up and I opened my door. There was nobody there. And not only was there nobody there, but I could step out and look both ways. There's nobody,
no.
right? So I sat down and I had my mind turning because I had just read the email, and I'm like, Nina, in my mind, Nina, was that you? And my computer goes, bing. And I looked down at the chat, and the chat said yes.
Believe it. I believe it.
And I'm giving myself chills because I knew in that moment that it was her confirmation that I just wanted you to know there's no hard feelings. Everything's fine. I know you're in tune, like it was like a major confirmation from heaven to earth. And because I was open to the sign coming in any way, it just all just flowed. And I'm like, whoa, like, whoa.
Yeah.
And then today, did you see my Facebook post today about, because my daughter's out of town, right?
Right. Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, so my dogs and my cat they're like clockwork with eating in the morning. So I wake up the same time every day, and I woke up and I'm like, I could tell by the light coming in my room how much time I had. I knew it wasn't time to get up. So I didn't do anything. I just laid there. And a few seconds later, I hear this blaring of music. And I'm like, what the?
Yes, you're cute. I did briefly see it. Yes.
Yeah. And so I was like, did Naomi turn on music on the, Amazon app in Oregon? And is it playing on our Alexa? And so I got up thinking that that had to be what it was. And it was blaring, and it was my TV, and it was playing that song. I forget the name of it, but it's all about, you know, how long, where have you gone? I miss you. And it's been so long since you went away. And my dog's paw is on the remote. My dog turned the TV on, and he's laying in the ottoman, and the song is playing. And I'm like, he sleeps with Naomi every night. And he's like, where are you? You're gone. And it was like the saddest. I felt so sad for him. And I was like, you want to know where Naomi is? She'll be back tomorrow, baby. Right? So I really believe the universe will talk to us if we're open to it. And I'm like,
I agree 100%. Circling back to the knocking, that is a belief that I grew up with. My grandmother, extremely gifted woman. I mean, she was so very gifted. I don't even have words. But I just remember being younger, and I grew up with my grandmother. Sorry, I got all these little hairs all over. And we would just be sitting watching TV, and we would hear that 3 knocks, and she knew what it was. Every single, I'm going to say this probably happened about 2 or 3 times growing up. And each time she would say, somebody's just passed. She wouldn't go and open up the door, because anybody who was at her house was there. She didn't have visitors. She just knew. She, like I said, she was extraordinary. She didn't need to go check. She just knew.
yeah.
But she was just like, somebody just passed. And sure enough, within the hour, maybe later that day, she would get a call that a relative had passed.
Aww.
So anytime I hear knocks, I look out my little peephole, and if there's nobody there, I don't answer the door, because I'm just, along with my other beliefs, it's just, you don't know what it could be trying to get into your house. There's funky stuff up there, and I'm not going to
if you're open to the fact that, like, literally the universe talks in ways you don't expect all the time, those things will happen. Because I do have, people in my life. How come I never see a sign? Well, maybe you're not open. Maybe the signs are there. You're just not open, to the ways that they're coming through. Because, like, it's to the point for me where I'm so in tune, and I'm not saying it from a place of arrogance. I'm saying it from just like a connection to the divine. But I'm so connected to the divine, or the source of all, or whatever choice you choose for that energy, that literally, and it's confirmed all the time. Somebody will pop into my head, and then the phone will ring and it's them. Or I'll text them and they'll say, oh, I was just thinking about you. Or, and it happens so often that now I don't even need them to confirm. I just know that if they pop into my head and, oh, they're thinking about me, and I could, like, if I can fine tune it and I'm in a good place, I could tell what it is emotionally that is going on with them. Do I need to call or reach out, or is it just, I'm just on their mind because maybe something's bothering them, or, maybe there's something between us, so it's to the point where, like, even people that I haven't seen in a long time, it's like, oh, why are they popping into my head?
Exactly. I experienced the same thing. It happens daily. And to kind of like go back to what you're saying about people who say that I don't see the signs, I ask for them, but I'm not getting them. And I think what for me was I had that mindset. And when I let go of the expectation of how I'm going to receive this sign is when I, started to realize I need to let go of the expectation of the sign, what it should be, how it should come across, when it should come across. I'm saying, I need a sign now, but universe works in its own divine timing, and we get the signs when we need them, not necessarily when we want them. But I think once you let go of that expectation, and just lead with your heart. I was talking to one of my friends who was going through that same kind of conflict. I asked for signs. I don't get them. I said, well, once you let go of the expectation of the sign, that's your first step. I said, now the way that you are going to work with your spirit guides and to try and bring yourself closer to the divine, to source, just say that you're open and you're ready. You have to declare it. I believe that as well. You have to be open-minded, which I think you also have to verbalize. I am ready to start receiving. I am ready to start receiving those.
Ask and you shall receive. Yes.
Yes. And so I said, you have to out loud say that you're ready to start seeing signs. You're ready to receive, and then start essentially playing with the universe, right? Just say, universe, good morning. Today, can you please show me a bluebird? Can you show me a yellow shirt? Be specific. Start playing with the universe and asking for those signs.
Well,
and then just
what I like to do is I like to say, I would like some kind of sign before. I'll give a time period. If it's meant to be, could you show me a sign before? And then that way I could keep that, because we have monkey mind. You know how we let our brains turn over? We have monkey mind. And so if I have a time frame where I can stay mindful, then I'll be open to the signs. But if I don't give a time frame, sometimes I get monkey mind and then the sign never comes, or I forget to look for it. So I try to, that's my way of keeping myself mindful, because really that's what we have to do. We have to turn our brains off in order to hear the universe. If we're only hearing our internal tape, we're not going to hear the universe.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. I at any time I get a sign, whether it's from the universe or a loved one, it's just such a good feeling, right? It's just so reassuring, and just a really good reminder of, hey, there's more to it. You can still communicate with those who have passed, if they just pop in your mind all of a sudden, you have a memory. I firmly believe that's the way that they communicate. I just believe that there's different ways that they are always telling us and showing us that they're here, and the universe always reminding you that you are, your soul experience, having a human experience, and to be reminded of, where we come from. So it just feels good, right? It's like a little hug. It's like a little hug from the universe. And I live for those moments. Those are my favorite.
When I moved to Arizona in 2006 on a whim. And when I moved, I left a job that I'd had for 10, 12 years. And I had, some rocky relationships moving to the top of that job, with some of my coworkers. And one of them was this lady. I'm not going to name her name in case, anybody happens to hear it, but we ended up being, closer. And when I moved, she would email me all the time. And my email has always been, "What's your sign?" But when you read it, it looks like, in her eyes, some people say white surgeon, but when she would see it, she'd write to me and she'd say, "How you doing, white sugar?" And she was always silly. And she would give me updates, "White sugar," and this is what's going on, and she would tell me about California and this and that. And 2009, my life changed a lot. I had just entered in a new relationship, and I was in a good place emotionally. And when the beginning is always like the honeymoon stage, right? And so you don't anticipate anything. Well, we moved into a place together. It was all, I'll be honest, I'll never move that fast in a relationship again. It was all really fast. And we moved in together, and we moved into the fourth story of an apartment, and the floor when you walked in had one of the tiles blown out. There was like literally a hole. And we moved in a day early because, they didn't want us to move in until the next day because they were going to fix that hole, but they let us move in a day early. So we brought in our futon and slept in the living room. And we went to sleep, whatever. And then, we had where the sun come up is where the slider was. So it was a bright light that I could sense was there. Cause even though your eyes are shut, you sense the bright light. And I could sense the bright light, and I'm thinking, and I heard something like physical. I thought, somebody tried to get in the door. Maybe the workers don't know that we moved in a day early. Oh my God, they're trying to get in. And so I looked up because I needed to go tell them that we're here. And a bright light and two people were standing in front of me. And it was my friend who passed away with a male figure behind her. And the light is glowing. And she walked closer to me and she said, everything's going to be okay. And she put her hands out, and light shot out of her hands into my abdomen and out my head. And I sat straight up out of the bed. I was like it happened. And I'm giving myself chills. And I was just like, what she said, never left me. She's like, everything's going to be okay. Well, it ended up being a really rocky relationship. So I kind of felt like it was her way of saying, it's great now, but everything is going to be okay. And being that she passed away, hearing that, I felt like she was saying everything is going to be okay. Don't take this world too seriously. So, when I do feel really down, and this world is hard to deal with, or I'm overloaded, sensor wise with the emotions of this world, I try to remember that, not to take this world seriously because everything's going to be okay. And it was the most amazing. There was one other experience I'll share another time, and it doesn't have to do with a body, but it does have to do with a light beam. But that one, because it was personal, it was somebody I knew, and it was somebody that I wasn't uber bonded with, but had good relations with, eventually. And I just was like, wow, that's so crazy that how the timing, it was literally the first day we moved in together. It was the beginning of things, and everything is going to be okay. And I'm thinking, I overthought on that one a lot. I was like, why did she tell me that? And
What happened? Oh my
yeah.
gosh. Yeah.
And my partner is Christian at the time, and she just was all worried and paranoid that it was a bad sign. And I'm like, no way, that wasn't a bad sign at all. So, but I'm sure you will hear lots of amazing, you'll have lots of amazing stories and experiences coming now that you're channeling all this new energy, and Reiki is magical like that.
It is. I'm looking forward to I know going through this end of life doula program is going to not prepare me. I mean, not only prepare me for that role, but intuitively I know it's gonna benefit me too as well. I just know. I can already tell just in some of the, I'm at the beginning stages of the program, and have already read some stuff that I was just like, oh my gosh, and they know it because even in the program outline says that you may experience some things that could potentially trigger you, or if you need to seek healing, go, seek healing or a therapist. Like I was like, oh wow, like
Yeah, you're definitely
I'm
on for a ride because
I,
yeah, you're channeling higher energy, and none of us are perfect. Our bodies, we're very somatic. We carry energy in our bodies, and if there's anything that we haven't let go of, especially if we're empathic, we
yeah.
hold on to things that you'll start to have releases. You could have a spiritual emergency, and again, I know you have that support system, but if you need me, I'm here too. So, I'm, yeah, absolutely. I'm, my door is wide open for you.
I appreciate that. Likewise.
Yeah.
I helped take care of my grandparents the last couple of years of their life. I lived next door to them, and my grandfather was bedridden. My grandmother was still very mobile, right? She still worked up until the day she died. But they died 10 days apart. Now, my grandfather, we knew he was going to go. He was ill. He had been in the hospital. They sent him home on a hospice. And he passed a few days later. And then my grandmother passed. My grandfather died February 7th, and my grandmother died February 17th. And she just had a massive heart attack in the middle of the night, just completely unexpected, right?
Yeah.
She was the nucleus of our family. She was the main.
Oh,
She raised me. And so, I was there when my grandfather took his last breath. I was there when my grandmother took her last breath. And it was just, there was a series of events that led up to it. But, it was very traumatic for me because they were like my parents. So the grief of losing them, that's another reason why I want to go into, being an end of life doula, is to support the family, because I
yeah.
wish I had a meeting. Everybody grieves differently. So it's not off, everybody grieves differently. Sometimes families get closer, sometimes families don't, and
Yeah.
they grieve separately. And that was the case in my family. And, I wish I had somebody there to help me. I would have grieved in a much healthier way.
Now you get to heal you. Now you get to be that for yourself, and you'll have to take some time for that. As you go through this process, you'll heal yourself with that trauma first, and allow it and accept it and love it and heal it. And then, you'll have that life experience, that healing life experience, once you heal through it, to, add to helping others. So I think it's a beautiful, amazing story.
Yeah. Yeah. All of these experiences, that's just what's led me to choosing this soul path, this soul journey, and being in this role. I by the time I was 10 years old, I had been to several funerals, and there were people that I know who had not even been to a single one, and they were in their 40s.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I know everybody's different, but I feel like I've just been exposed to that part of life at a very young age. And I mean, I'm also a Scorpio, so we have,
I was going to
the
say,
rebirth.
yeah.
Yeah, so I have that.
Yeah.
The death and rebirth. That's what we're known for. So it's no surprise that I chose this, and I hope one day, and if I could just at least comfort one person, I feel that's just enough for me, right? It's just to be able to comfort one person. And if I could just show one person that there's beauty in death, I feel like that's my work here is done.
There you
It's
go.
weird because Western culture, we look at death in such a very sad, mournful way, but really it's just us. They're living a great life on the other side, and they're getting to see all the other souls, from all the
Yeah.
other lifetimes, and
Your
rejoining
connection
that
is
soul network,
a
right?
little
And we're
off.
here sad, but Eastern culture celebrates it in very different ways, you know? And so I really would love to be able to, I wish I could, you know, transition everybody to celebrate death, but, you know, that's huge undertaking. But if I can at least show one person there's beauty in it, then like I said,
Well,
much love and
I look forward to your stories and listening to your journey along the way. So it should be interesting.
yeah.
Well, we, I think, have two full 25-minute sessions, and I would love to, end it, on a thank you for sharing your story with everybody, and invite
Yeah.
any of our listeners out there to who would like to add in to anything you or I talked about. Please, get in contact with us. Let us hear your stories and, about either your doula experiences or maybe people who have passed over or reading signs, and that connection and add to the conversation.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Oh, alrighty. Well, I'm going to stop recording. I think I'm going to